Ladies and gentlemen, we're in an open workshop which is being covered live. I don't mind that at all. And just to make it abundantly clear to all of you, this is not replacing any speaking opportunity within the budget debate at all. You can still say what your full thing there. You may be very brief or pass up the opportunity to inform me or others, or just use the whole 5 minutes. But a number of people wanted to speak, and I want to know the latest thinking of the people around the table, which has very little, but I have to say. And so we're in your hands for 5 minutes, Councillor, up to 5 minutes. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Worship. I was approached some months ago by a colleague who shall remain nameless, and he was concerned that when it came to divisions, I came first and then I wouldn't know how to vote. So I'll use different language than how I explained that today, but I don't mind going first and I appreciate the opportunity. So thank you. Look, I supported the draft consultation proposal as harsh and as blunt as it was, because it allowed Aucklanders to tell us exactly what was important to them. And often, as we are told, it gave people the opportunity to sort out what they believe our core services are. And it's clear that everyone has a different view on what Council's core services are. But it's a conversation that we've actually needed to have for some time. I don't believe, so looking at the levers, Your Worship, I don't believe we can or should try to squeeze more savings out of our organisation across the family. That lever, I believe, has probably been pulled too hard, and in particular for Te Taki Auckland Unlimited and Auckland Transport. But I will welcome, when it comes to the long-term plan, I will certainly welcome the opportunity for us to look at what we do, where we do it and how we do it, because I think it is absolutely something we must do. Having owned and operated a couple of businesses, I am adamant that borrowing to get ourselves out of a financial hole is not only irresponsible but sets us up for an uncomfortable and preventable rocky road in the future. Applying my limited success at university entrance economics, I'm uncomfortable borrowing money to keep the doors open, as I believe that's a road to insolvency. Whilst Council does have the ability to tax to make up a shortfall, I am also very reluctant to use rates over and above our current inflation level to bolster a hole when we have other alternatives. And that obviously leads to the sale of the airport shares. I've never been afraid. At local board level, we were never afraid to look at underperforming assets in terms of what was useful once to try and help us through a hole. I sold my bonus bonds, cashed them in that my parents had bought for me. But so I'm not afraid to sell underperforming assets, and so I'm fully in favour of a full sale of the airport shares, and we'll be supporting that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And that was 2 minutes and 40 seconds. Excellent. Councillor Filipina.
Thank you, Your Worship. And a colleague of mine said I was grandstanding, but I won't mention who that person is. And I can tell you that is not grandstanding around the standing orders and point of order. Your Worship, in your kōrero, your opening remarks, you said that you wanted them in the amendments in writing, and then you would look at them and see if they would, that you will allow them to be put in to your mayoral proposal. That is what irked me, for want of a better term. And I've now been told that that is not the situation, that the amendments will be put up in the open agenda. So I'm waiting for the open agenda in regards to that. But I think the key thing for me, and with all the staff that we've had, I will be asking staff some questions in the open agenda, Your Worship, and colleagues. And those questions that I will be asking will be around the $140 million that we will be okay to borrow, to put on debt, which the workshop identified. That's the 140 million. In regards to the airport shares, I'm going to listen to the colleagues around this particular table. and just to have a look at their view in regards to where I will finalise my position around the airport shares. But can I tell you that my colleague to my left, and it's appropriate that he's on my left, because that's actually, that's actually quite good. That my colleague on the left, for example, said that these shares were performing quite well up until a certain time. Well, that time would have been through COVID. But guess what? Things are sort of up in the projection around those shares. So we are returning back to what my humble and learned colleague on my left has said. Used to be good days. Well, we're heading back to those good days. So, Your Worship, I will save my whakaaro and any pātai. I will save that till after, because can I just confirm that we won't have the ability to ask staff now in regards to our 5 minutes? No. So I'll save all my pātai and everything else. Yep, I'll save it to them. I will, however, Your Worship, and I'll end up saving that question when we get into open, even though we're an open workshop, in regards to anything from your any incentives that were offered to any councillors around here from either yourself or your office. That'll be a question that I'll be asking. So I wanted to forewarn your staff, Your Worship, that is a pātai that I will be asking. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Filipina. Councillor Dalton, please.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. Look, I'm probably going to speak more in the item itself, but look, just acknowledging the difficulty this is, this difficult budget for councillors. There are councillors around the table that have been through the last 3 budgets. This is our 4th COVID-impacted budget. They've all been really, really hard. I don't think this is the hardest budget, actually. I think we've been through harder ones through COVID, and why it was harder is because we had no income outside of our rates. Our rates income is 39% of our total income. So we lost 61% of our income during lockdowns. And the decisions we had to make with no end in sight of when that was going to end. But here we are now in another COVID-impacted budget. We're still in a unique situation. We're still not business as usual. But what we do have is light at the end of the tunnel. We have revenue returning. We have dividends returning from the port and from the airport. This is not the time to sell the car to buy the petrol. This is a time for us to just get through this. It's hard to put rates out there for our people. I have 4 children. With children and mortgages and daycare fees, I get it. But what is impacting our families the most, what's impacting them the most is the cost of living. And no, we should be trying to do our best not to make that much harder. But put in context a rate increase to the other costs, and put in context how hard that will be if we don't do something this year, what will happen next year. It's going to be another hard year. It's going to be another hard couple of years, actually. So we've got a ways to go, but we've got to manage ourselves pragmatically through this budget, acknowledging it's not business as usual for a normal business. The assets, and we'll have that debate later, the only thing that I would have perhaps would have changed, Your Worship, is acknowledging other assets that we had in that decision instead of only having the airport shares and the assets. But other than that, we've heard quite clearly from Aucklanders, they want us to use short-term debt. They want us to increase the rates. They want us to keep the airport shares. And they want us to keep the services that mean so much to them. And as a council, we have a responsibility to be partners with our community, to look after the well-being of our community. We don't hand that over to central government. We say, we care, we want to be part of a vibrant, healthy, sustaining Auckland. And so to do that, we are at the table with Citizens Advice Bureau. We are at the table with everything else that we contribute to around Māori and Pacifica and climate action. So that's where I sit. We've still got a ways to go to get back to whatever the new normal looks like. The long-term plan I'm looking forward to, because we do need to change. Councillor Williamson is right. We've got to stop doing some stuff we've been doing for a very long time and give it to the people who do it better than we do. And we do have to cut costs. It's a continual battle. Thanks to Councillor Simpson, who's led Value for Money, the council has saved $2.2 billion since the beginning of this council. $2.2 billion. It's an ongoing piece of work. And everything that we look at, we must look into context. Don't just take one thing and look at it on its own. Look at it all together. And we have to really reset our budgets for the next 10 years for our city to be the vibrant city that we want it to be. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Dalton. Councillor Fooley.
Oh, kia ora. Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, my councillors on my left as well, for those awesome remarks. And I want to tautoko everything that Councillor Dalton and Councillor Filipaina have said as well. I do want to pick up on something that Councillor Baker has said. I haven't forgotten you, Councillor Baker. You know, everyone to my left are from South Auckland, so they are my colleagues that I've known actually the entire time that I've been involved in local government. I just want to pick up on the remark that we ought to sell our underperforming assets, and I agree with that. We do. We should sell our underperforming assets, but we haven't actually looked at all of our assets to see which assets are underperforming the most. We've only looked at one asset, and after having the chance to have a look at evidence, to have a look at the market, to have a look at how this asset has performed during this whole process, I'm of the view that actually it's not an underperforming asset. I agree with Bernard Hickey, who last night on TV1 said that it is a high-performing asset. I've seen the price of that asset continue to rise during this whole process, regardless of the negative comments that people and staff have made about this asset. You would expect that when an asset is talked about like that there might be some loss in confidence from other investors, and that might affect the market and its market price, but that has not happened. We've seen it continue to trend upwards, even though some staff don't want to use that term, but we have seen it continue to increase in share price and trend upwards. And so I'm confident in tautokuing what my colleagues next to me have said, that this is a high-performing asset. It is an asset that we ought to keep. And yes, we should consider our underperforming assets, but that's a discussion to have at the long-term plan. During that process, let's have a look at all of our assets. At the start of this process, we were told nothing is off the table. And then we were continued to be given advice on only one main asset, our biggest asset, as it turns out. And when I've asked what other asset do we own that returns for us a huge capital gain and a dividend in the tens of millions, as we're expected for it to return to us this coming year, the only other asset that is comparable is our Ports of Auckland shares. We have other assets that we know do not earn us a dividend and actually cost us money to hold. They may provide for us a capital gain, but let's have a look at those assets. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying let's put all of those things on the table. Let's have a look at our spending. Let's have a look at our assets. Let's put everything on the table during that long-term plan process. But let's not be rash. Let's not sell off these shares, $2.3 billion worth of shares, in order to plug a $325 million hole. Let's not make the mistake that past councils have made in order to pay down debt or, fix infrastructure as they've done in the past, only to regret, I think, coming into the future now and coming to the merger with nothing or almost nothing to provide the rest of Auckland. Manukau City Council and Auckland City Council had the vision, had the foresight under leadership of great leaders like Sir Barry Curtis to not only hold on to our shares, but to increase our shareholding. And the rest of Tāmaki Makaurau Auckland has benefited from that good decision-making. The rest of Tāmaki Makaurau Auckland has benefited to the tune of $400 million in dividends. You know, if we do sell those shares, they'll be gone forever. My kids, your kids, our grandchildren will not be able to benefit in the way that the rest of us have benefited from those shares. Your Worship, I will have more to say when we get to the debate, and I will have questions for our officers. But for now, I will leave it at that. And thank you for the opportunity to express my opinions. Kia ora.
Thank you for that. Councillor Darby.
Thanks, Matt. So look, I'll probably just keep it reasonably, at the higher level, and I appreciate this opportunity, so thank you. So just, focusing more on what the rates look like through my eyes, what the cuts look like, and what the debt looks like, and then the question of divestment of the Auckland International Airport shareholding. So generally, Mayor, your most recently updated proposal, it's tracking in a somewhat favourable direction, and there's a refinement there. So I'm not patting you on the back too effusively, okay? But look, we're heading there. But I think on the rates, I just need to, I am prepared to go a little bit higher than you're proposing. I'm mindful that you're informed by what our most recent CPI number is, Consumer Price Index. I've asked our staff, and particularly at Auckland Transport, what really drives their program, CapEx and OpEx. And of course, it's not the price of fruit and veg. And the CPI is really, and particularly the last couple of quarters, it's been driven by, the non-tradables, and particularly things that really don't drive our costs. What really drives our costs is more the Producers' Price Index and the Labour Index. And we've seen big escalation in the capital space, particularly at Auckland Transport, and they've hurt badly in that area, and also on labour. So from my calculations, it's in the ballpark of an additional 1% to reflect the Producer Price Index and the Labour Index as opposed to the CPI. So just giving you that feedback, Mayor. In the area of the cuts, I'm generally supportive. I think I was a little bit surprised how quickly you did the big reversal there. But I probably have a caveat there. I actually think the local boards do need to participate in this challenge as well. And you've restored fully 16. I've had some conversations with your office in the last few days, and I thought the number was more a 12, but I'm probably thinking it's a 12 to a 14. Now, I don't say that lightly, but this is an all-in. Auckland Council is the governing body and the local boards. And so we all have to participate in this enormous challenge, as our Chief Executive and yourself has outlined. So that's where I sit on that. On the debt, I am prepared. I note your move towards the 100. I know some of my colleagues are prepared to go a lot higher. I know we're going to compound, we're at risk of compounding some problems going into the LTP. So I'm looking not just today, I'm actually looking ahead towards our LTP to make sure that we don't compound to a situation where we have got an enormous problem in front of us in that year. So kicking the can down the road comes in many guises, doesn't it? So I'm probably, to give you some feedback there, I'm probably prepared to look at an extension of that into the $110, $120 million range. Mayor, I just do want to comment on, and I think this is off the table now, there's a couple of community facility, you're a trader as you mentioned, but I would put them down to as SOPs. The community facilities of Mandorewa and at Avondale, they can't be on the table. They need to go through a proper process. They haven't gone through a proper process. My respective boards of Kaipātiki, I'm sure that the board chair would have put up Birkenhead, the development there that we need to undertake, and many other boards would have put theirs up, as Councillor Bartley was referring to before. that draws me to the final and the big one is the airport. The airport. I did put up, and you accommodated my motion of a partial sell down earlier on. And I put that there because I thought we probably needed to be considering something, depending on all the other levers and how they were landing, something between that 0 and on. So I'll wrap there. I'm going to put this out. I'm actually prepared to consider a partial of a tranche of $500 million. And I don't say that lightly. I've examined this very, very hard. Mayor, I do have caveats with this, though. We do need to undertake a really good, robust process to understand the strategic value and the strategic outcomes of the airport. Now, members, I proposed this with the former mayor, and it was rejected. It was rejected by the left, and it was rejected by the right. It was rejected by the left because, well, it might actually show that there are no strategic values, and it was rejected by the right because it might confirm there were strategic values. Yet that is a very fundamental thing to do, and we need to do it for at least the balance of the shareholding. So that's what I'm leaving here with you today. Gone over time a little bit. Thank you.
Councillor Bartley's next.
Thank you, Your Worship, for this opportunity to give 5 minutes in reflection on our positions. I will speak later as well, but I didn't support your budget going out for consultation because I felt that it was too much on cutting the community side, not enough focus on people. And it's good that your budget went out because the people came back in their thousands to say that they supported and they wanted to see those services that council does, which support our community, being kept there, being part of what council delivers, not offloaded to another agency to deliver, but for council to continue to deliver, because they see the importance of a council doing what it does in terms of the well-being of its city, not just bricks and mortar. So I felt that your budget was a kind of looking at a philosophical standpoint of what the core services of council should be. And I believe people have said that core services of council should include what services the well-being of a city. I probably watched too much Netflix because I felt that ended up being what was held to ransom for us to consider to sell the airport shares. If we want to keep the community, funding the community side of council, we have to support selling the shares. Now, in terms of our community side, I feel like they are being punished for going and getting external funding, which seems to be what is an aspiration of these budget cuts, is trying to seek external funding when we're already doing that as a council. The millions that are going into our Community and Customer Services Directorate, they are already seeking external funding. And yet they are the ones being proposed to be cut. But right in the very beginning, you said this was about doing more for less. Council is already doing more for less, given the millions that are coming in, the almost 1.7 million coming from Te Puni Kōkiri, almost $1 million coming from TEC, MB 3 million for up tempo, 3.5 million coming from Health New Zealand. You know, there's already millions coming into our community directorate from external providers. We should be able to continue doing what we're doing for the well-being of our city. CAB, again, people didn't say offload that. They said we still want to keep supporting CAB. So it's not about offloading them to someone else to do. People want our city to still provide that service, to still support that service, because it all goes to the lifeblood of our city. It all goes to the vibrancy, the arts, the culture, the events. That is all important to Auckland, and Auckland told us that. And our Te Taki Auckland Unlimited, we still need that economic development for our city, given what they've just done recently with IKEA, with Costco. Those big companies don't just turn up in a city like that. That was all their hard work. So that's my bit about our community directorate. In terms of the airport, one of the other councillors said to us that we shouldn't hold on to the airport because of affection. I do have affection for the airport shares because it brings us in $40 million a year. So I have affection to the revenue that brings us. I'm open to asset sales. I am open to asset sales, but how this has come about is it's just sell the shares. I want us to look at the rest of our $70 billion asset base that we have and not just come up with the one that's easiest to offload. Excuse me. I don't have COVID, by the way. But yeah, I just cannot comprehend selling an asset that brings us in money. There are other assets that will probably be underperforming. We need to look at those in the $70 billion that we have. So I look at the dividends that brings in for the council. I look at how it's 2.2 billion, but in 2011 it was 70 million. So look at how much that has grown. So that is where my affection lies, is with the revenue that brings us in, and with what that revenue goes towards in our communities to keep our community services operational. So yes, I agree with selling the assets once we have a good look at our $70 billion asset base and what we can sell. And I agree with your figure on the rates, and I agree with your cuts so far. But obviously, my tendency is borrowing. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Henderson, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'll talk more about the detail of where I'm thinking a bit later, but look, I've been the focal point of some of the discussion recently in the media and in the public, and I just want to thank everyone that's contacted me for, either for or against asset share sales and things like that. It's been really helpful to sort of refine my thinking. I think we need to go higher on rates, and I'd be looking at, like Councillor Darby said, maybe 1%, maybe a little bit more. We need to balance the budget and actually look at things in totality. I'll talk more about debt a bit later, but I'm comfortable with our level of debt. If we need to go a little bit higher, that's okay, but I would not want us to go hugely up in terms of our debt. There's huge consequences to that I want to talk about later. I do want to focus my feedback at the moment on the level of cuts we were facing, as I did in previous discussions as well. Look, I'm glad that we've moved on from the initial proposal that came out. I think we're really going in the right direction there to somewhere a lot more comfortable. Just want to quickly acknowledge the hard work of many councillors that have worked hard on this aspect of the budget, particularly Councillor Hills, Councillor Ferry, there are others as well. Thank you for your hard work on this. I think my residents will thank you too. The initial proposal I called death by 1,000 cuts. Now, that wasn't easy to hear, I'm sure. It wasn't easy to say. But I'm really glad that we've moved on from that position to somewhere we're a hell of a lot more comfortable and much better than the black budget that we were facing on public service cuts. We're looking a lot more positive. That's good. If anything, I'd want over 50 million. I'd want to increase that level of service and give back as much as possible to public services. But we do need to compromise on that point, I understand that. Because these services are built off the backs of public workers, public spends, that the future of our city involves these things being retained and increased. No city can cut their way to prosperity. No people have ever thanked them for it either. Let's move on from a conversation of cutting. I'm alarmed that we've already had several discussions around we can cut this, we can cut that, even in this discussion now. Hacking and slashing. Let's talk about the city we want to actually live in, to bring our kids up in. That's what I want to talk about. We've been... maybe hold your applause, I'd say. We've been putting assets on the table over successive budgets. I just want to very politely and respectfully differ on that point. In terms of throwing more assets on the table, I don't want to do that. We've sold up enough parks, in my view. We've done that. I don't want to keep doing that. I've heard the views and I've read the messages of so many people that have contacted me, and again, I thank you. But I've read the submissions of Waitakite's residents as well. At this table, I have never voted against what they've told me to vote for. Never. And I don't intend to do that today either. And the fact is, a clear majority of Waitakite's residents supported at least a partial sale. That's it. if a sale must be done to save jobs and public services, the work of our excellent community groups that enrich the lives of Aucklanders every day, services that people will miss. If we have to sell shares to do that, I would suggest that we do two things. One, we look at no more than a partial sale. And I suggest that this actually has more support around the table. And that's important because we do need to reach a compromise position. No one's going to be fully happy, right? Secondly, I do want us to look in the long-term plan at a serious attempt to gain assets and investments that will provide reliable dividends to boost our public services long into the future. Finally, and I'll talk a bit more about it, but I do just want to thank you all for whatever happens today. It will be a compromise. We're all going to have to swallow a dead rat or two, and that's fine. That's what compromise is all about. But I hope that through this process, as custodians working together, we're boosting the trust and confidence in the direction of the city and in Auckland that we can be proud to live in. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you,